Thank you, Michael. And now today we're going to talk about politics in the 1970s. During the 1970s, the position for president has been really strange. But President Richard Nixon really made a huge impact on how the president should act. Although President Nixon ended the Vietnam War and passed the Endangered Species Act to protect our wildlife and the foreign affairs with the Soviet Union, we stood next to Europe and we would help fight the Soviets if they tried anything. Even though Nixon had these great accomplishments, he also had a bad incident with the Watergate scandal. Most of the U.S. citizens still remember what happened with President Nixon and how he resigned because of the Watergate scandal. If you don't remember what happened, at the Watergate building, there was 5 men arrested for spying on the other party. They all had money inside their pockets. The members of the company took on the role of finding out where the money came from. They tracked the money all the way back to the president, which was Nixon at the time. Later on, people started to hear that Nixon was recording all the conversations that were happening in the White House. The Supreme Court asked Nixon to hand them over, and he refused to do so. More information about the recording was revealed, and the Supreme Court ordered Nixon to hand over the tapes. Nixon knew that when the Supreme Court heard the tapes, he was going to get impeached. So instead of being impeached, Nixon resigned from being president. President Nixon was the only president that ever resigned. He resigned because he knew that the Supreme Court found out that he was the man responsible for the Watergate scandal. When the Supreme Court listened to the tapes, they heard Nixon firsthand talking about how they were going to cover up the Watergate scandal. When Nixon resigned, Vice President stepped up and took the role as president. 6 weeks after Ford became president, he pardoned Nixon for any crimes he had done when he was in office. Basically, he let Nixon off the hook for what he was doing when he was president. The people that were working for Nixon didn't get off the hook. Most of them were sent to prison for committing the crimes for Nixon to spying on the other political figures. Then after Ford, when he was done being president, Jimmy Carter was elected, and he helped our wildlife, environment, and education. By creating the Department of Energy and the Department of Education, he also signed the Panama Canal Treaty that promised that the canal that was constructed for a shortcut from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean would be given to the people of Panama in the year 2000. Jimmy Carter also had a very different view with the conflict of the Soviet Union and the Cold War. He avoided having military get involved in the war. He mainly focused on the economy and get the relationship with Soviets stronger so that the two countries don't have to worry about having a full-out war, especially when both countries have nuclear weapons that could destroy a really big amount of the earth. Carter, when he first got into office, his plan was to improve human rights more and spread human rights as much as possible. In 1976, Carter put the Universal Declaration of Human Rights into play. The Declaration was made in 1948, but it wasn't until 1976 that it is first put into use and is used. This was a huge part of Jimmy Carter's campaign to improve and spread human rights for everyone. Carter also had a problem with his campaign. He had the Soviet Union close to invading Europe to try to make them communist, and he also had troubles with North Korea and South Korea, about to have the same problem. The United States backed South Korea and Europe with military and economic support. The purpose of this was to make sure that they would get involved and wouldn't become communists. Luckily, the conflict never came to that. To recap, Richard Nixon was a good president until he made a wrong decision, and Jimmy Carter really helped form many countries the way they are now, with all the human rights being put into play. Now that Eric was entertained.